My name is Alan Niven, and I'm flogging my book, which goes to 11. And the only reason my book goes to 11 is because KNAC showed me how to go to 11 back in 1986.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
So, Alan, I'm running out of stuff to ask you, but you do have a book now, and it's Sound and Fury, June 24th. And well, tell us about a little bit of what's the process of getting something like this published?
Having too much time on your hands.
There you go.
Obviously, it's not a completely ridiculous statement to point out that I have been bugged for years. When are you going to write your memories? For decades. And at one point, I did actually start to write a manuscript. And Ruben, I fucking hated it.
Right.
It was a chore. It bored me. And fundamentally, I found it a depressing exercise. From my perception, I tended to see all the things that went wrong and all the things that didn't get done, rather than being self-congratulatory about what might have been done. I saw all the things that got fucked up. So I didn't enjoy it. And I sent it to someone, hoping, thinking they were going to say, quit, don't want this out. Mm-hmm. And instead, I get this email from Slash saying, book is great, finish it. Which was an oh fuck, that's not what I wanted, because I wanted an excuse to give it up and someone to blame.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So I just had to put it on the shelf myself. And two people kept bugging me about doing it. And I actually got to a point where one said something to me that in such a way that I went, that corners me. I've got to think this through. And I'm well aware, a little bit of awareness helps in life. I sometimes look at Axl and think of the quotation, "He who does not know himself will be defined by his fame." Anyways, my self-awareness is I'm just an old dusty jukebox in the corner of the kitchen. Old and in the way, unless somebody puts a quarter in and I tell a story. And of course, my version of a quarter is a really nice glass of Graham's vintage port. Pour me another one, and I might tell you another story.
There you go.
So eventually the obvious occurred to me, and the obvious was, you don't like rock and roll books. They all have the same story arc, only the names change. And what people really want to enjoy about a rock and roll book is stories about the bands, not about your childhood, not about your family. Just get to it and tell a story like you were sitting at your kitchen table,
right?
The old jukebox. So that's what I did. I just tell stories. And I treated it like an album. Because in some ways, a really good album is like a good book. It takes you from the beginning to the end, and you find it interesting, stimulating, and maybe even sometimes challenging the way you think. And I thought, well, maybe a good book could be like an album and just be composed of specific tracks that all stand alone, but when you put it together, maybe it works. So I treated it like that. And the other thing I tried to keep in mind was, don't write it for a fan. Write for the merely curious.
Right.
People who are not that concerned whether they're that interested in these musicians or not, but standing in the bookstore in the airport, they might go, yeah, that might get me to Chicago.
Right.
I was trying to write for that consciousness.
So is this, in thinking of the concept, because we spoke about this before, each chapter representing like a track. Is this almost like, did you have to put these stories together almost like a greatest hits? Because, the way you're describing it, is like basically, some of the casual fans that, they need to see certain familiar tunes. They're not too concerned about the deep tracks. Was that the approach, or did it just turn out that way?
It's very kind of you to suggest that it even turned out that way. In terms of the stories, obviously my first go-tos are the ones that, sitting around a kitchen table, people would enjoy and respond to. So those are my first go-tos. There were things that I could have written about that I didn't, because I felt it was a bridge too far. Certain things that could have been exposed that I went, meh, that's getting a little over the line. I mean, the stories themselves are pretty extraordinary. It's the quote that I opened the book with. There are two quotes. One is from Macbeth, and the design of that is, we're a bunch of misfits strutting around on a stage, and I'm the idiot telling the stories, and it's all just sound and fury that signifies nothing. And of course, my quote is, rock and roll is God's occupation for the unemployable.
Right.
We're a bunch of misfits doing everything we can to avoid having a real job. So there are going to be some entertaining moments.
Right. Was there a chapter rather, that maybe you omitted, maybe because it didn't flow well within the overall end product of the book?
Possibly. In the actual event, I got an email from the publisher demanding 60,000 count 'em words, which was just an anvil dropping on me, a weight of, oh my, that many? Well, I finally figured out how to get a word count, because I'm not always that brilliant with computers, but I finally figured out how to get a word count of what I had. And much to my amazement, I had over 60,000. So obviously at that point I went, I'm free.
Right.
It's done. I'm finished. I'm out of here. Take your 60,000 words, put a cover on it, put it in a bookstore.
Kind of surprising considering all the co-writes and stuff you've done over the years, huh? On lyrics and songs and stuff.
Being a songwriter actually was a great help, Ruben. Because when you're composing content for a song, first of all, you're trying to do the impossible. And the impossible is to find something fresh and something personal to put into a song. And how many songs exist? 6. I love you, I hate you, I feel good, I feel bad, the world is wonderful, the world is screwed up.
Right.
There is actually a 7th, which Pink Floyd are really good at, and that's the question.
Oh. Right.
So we've got 7 songs. So you're trying to put something that has not been said into basically that small a number of categories. And in doing that, you go through a very stringent editorial process where you're trying to shape the concept that you're going to apply to the song with a use of language that inspires some degree of interest and response, and doesn't sound like it's another Desmond Child song written for Bon Jovi, right? Follow me? The thing actually there that's not just paint by others. Let's throw in 3 babies and we've got a rock and roll song. So that process of editorial really helped me in this writing, because I was very much of the attitude of cut the crap, get to the point, tell a story, use your memory as best you can. And the other thing that was incredible to me was how many things that I was so certain that I remembered accurately in terms of what people said, which goes to what they said at the time had a searing impact on me. That it was something that I've never forgotten. So songwriting, composing definitely helped in my approach here.
Right. So I think, as I had mentioned, not to give away any stories, because, we obviously want people to buy the book, but definitely entertaining, good entertainment. What was that?
That's a great concept, Ruben.
Well,
I like that.
You gotta keep people interested, so they're curious, so they buy, right? Like I said, you were nice enough to send in advance. I had already pre-ordered the thing, and as you know, there's a few other people that we know that pre-ordered the thing, so that hopefully you get a nice little pop out of this thing. And then there's a part 2. Would there be a part 2?
Oh God, I can't even think about that at this point. It took me longer than I thought it would take. I wanted to avoid it becoming a chore. The idea of being like Jean le Carré, Cornwall, who wrote those great spy books, like The Spy Came In From Cold. This is a guy who gets up at a certain time in the morning, has his breakfast, leaves his house, walks over to a barn that he's had turned into an office, sits there and handwrites until a certain time of day. Then a secretary comes in and takes what he's handwritten and types it. And it's like having a job. You start at 7 and you get off at 1. And I wanted to avoid that. I didn't want to be in a situation of, so I roll out of bed, I have to go and do this. So it took a little longer to do.
Right.
Because I did it when I was in the mood. Occasionally, I would do it when I was thinking, God, you're such a lazy ass. Go and do some more. And that would pop up every now and then. But most of the time, I waited until I was in the mood. And again, doing it sober was significant to me. I did not want, I didn't want to be compromised in recollection and compromised in my use of language. I wanted to be clear and clean in my head. But doing another one, let's see if anybody wants the first one.
Well, I'm thinking there will be a demand for a second, but that's just my prediction, and maybe I'm biased. Maybe it's that bias, but no, I mean, again, I think the other thing that is great about the book is that the way it flows. I think one of the things you mentioned was the tracks, how kind of like how you sequence an album and stuff like that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was all part of the thinking, that it had to have a feel to it. And, I've read this thing so many times. and in the back end of the process of dealing with a publisher, and they want to apply an edit, and I'm like, change one word and you will be expired,
There you
but
go.
bless their hearts.
Sure.
They didn't change any words.
That's nice.
They didn't ask me to rewrite anything. The main thing was punctuation. And sometimes we had a disagreement about that because I used punctuation in the way that I would consider using notes,
Right.
series of bars. I wanted the words to flow in a certain way and to sound a certain way because I hear it as I'm writing it.
Nice. Well, that's good that you got the creative freedom, and the end result is the vision.
Yeah, it is great to have the creative freedom. But there again, Ruben, I have to hold my hand up and say, I'm a bit of a bear. It's like, if you want me to write this book, this is how I'm going to write it. And if you don't like it, reject it.
Right.
But if you enjoy it, put a cover on it, send it to a bookstore.
Right. I'm curious. Aside from Slash, it sounds like Slash said, go ahead and, you got his blessing to wrap up the book, finish it up. What's been the feedback from some of your musician friends, some that may or may not have been included in the book?
There's a couple of ways and a couple of levels to that question. On the first, I've got to say that I have been really touched because I've had really good response so far. People say they've enjoyed it and that it wasn't work to read it. And, the one or two have even said, I was sad when it ended. And the other aspect is, I got an email from Mick Wall, who I consider the only readable writer of rock and roll books.
Yeah.
He's really good at what he does.
Right.
And he sent me an email saying, welcome to the author club.
Right.
And I obviously went back and I said, oh, leave it out. You're at the apex of that club, and I am merely a temporary, enthusiastic amateur. All right. And he came back and he said, you don't get off that easy. Welcome to the club, and it's a curse.
Ah.
And I sat there for a moment and I went, ooh, what does he mean by that? And then the light bulb went on, the penny dropped, and I realized, yeah, it is a curse because you're obliged to the integrity of honesty about yourself, about other people. I think I give myself a little bit of a kicking in this book as well, which is probably thoroughly deserved. But the fact is, there are going to be people who are not going to want to read what I write. And if I allow their discomfort to impinge on my First Amendment rights, then don't even bother to start the book. You write from a point of view, this is what you remember, this is what you recall, put it down. And if other people don't like it, too bad.
Right. Yeah.
Get in the ring.
Yeah.
Write your own book.
There you go. Oh, I know with the amount of promotion that goes with it, what's the most taxing thing about it other than doing these interviews and stuff?
It's not taxing at all. It's actually quite pleasurable and delightful.
Nice.
Because now I get to have conversations with people I've never met before. And in our case, we've known each other for a long time, so it's a pleasure to talk to you always. So that I find pleasurable. Some people are better at this than others. There are some interviews, I just did one that was really hard work.
Wow.
All right. It was tough to do. But as I've gotten older in life, I mean, back in the day, the more people who surrounded me, the lonelier I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really hard time, Ruben, assessing people's motivations and assessing who you could trust. And that closed me down in a lot of ways. And these days, I don't have to worry about that. So, and it drives my wife mad, but I have to have a stranger conversation every day.
Mm-hmm.
Someone in the supermarket aisle, or in the parking lot, or on the sidewalk. I'll pick someone and I go, we're going to have a conversation.
Nice.
And I enjoy doing that. And it's somebody I don't know, will never see again. For a few moments, it's good eye contact and listening and talking about something. And it makes me feel a little bit better about people when I walk away.
Right.
And when I turn my TV on, there's an awful lot that makes me feel bad about people. So my stranger conversations during the day help me out because I can walk away and go, that's a cool guy. That's a nice little old lady.
Right.
I like her dog.
Yeah. There you go. And there you go. Real quick, I mean, if you don't mind, I do have some non-book questions, you know, and that'll probably wrap up the time we got left. That way you can, rest up
I'm
and
in no rush, Ruben.
and then get into another series of rounds of interviews, which I'm sure you'll be doing more of. Your thoughts on, because it kind of bugged me, even back in the day when this was happening, Great White not kind of, they did get lumped in with the 80s glam bands, and they definitely had more going on than more what do we say, more substance maybe than like a Warrant or a Poison, and yet they were lumped up in the same group pretty much.
Well, that's, an aspect of that is laziness on the part of the person who's describing the music or the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Believe me, even in the early days, I used to say to Great White, stay the fuck out of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get overly associated with the other Hollywood bands, because you're not a sunset band, and we're not going in that direction. The fact that people, there are those who have the patience and the taste to think about it a little bit more, and will sometimes describe Great White as a 1970s early blues rock band, which is basically where we landed in the end. And another, and it took time for that chemistry to settle. We all started working together in 1982? It was 1986 before we started to get somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That was time, that was shows, did a lot of shows, worked through a lot of things, and then began to find what really worked for the personalities involved. And, I don't see much of that happening these days, that people take the time to do that. And of course, with the explosion in the late 80s, it was very easy for a lot of musicians to try and cut the corner, short track, and just go and get the Aquanet and play the same three chords and use the same number of babies in their song. And there we are, we're on MTV. And if we're on MTV, we're going to sell a few records and we must be a real band. My musical consciousness began to develop in the late 50s. And I was very, very privileged and fortunate to grow up in a period of time of great development. I mean, I'm there watching the Beatles as entertainers, and then they make Rubber Soul and they become artists under the influence of people like Dylan and to some degree the Wilson brothers and the Beach Boys. And that period of time, Ruben, from 1964 to say 1974, that decade was magical. There were extraordinary things that popped up that you just, like, where did that come from? I remember walking into the old Virgin Record store down Oxford Street, and I'm listening to this stuff coming out of the speakers, and I'm going, what is that? I've never heard anything like it. And I'm listening to Santana's first record.
Oh, yeah.
Or I'm at Sunshine Records in Oxford, and I've read this little thing about this guy from Jamaica, and I'm curious, and I asked them to special order me his record, and I'm listening to Bob Marley for the first time.
Right.
And going, what is that? You know, that's a different groove. That's not Chuck Berry. That's not the Rolling Stones, but what's he on about too? He's pretty cool. You know, so an amazing decade to have formed shelves in your brain where you store all the music that you love. Yeah. And people say, you know, what got you into music? It all got me in.
Right.
It was wonderful. There was so much good music at a certain time. Now, the first thing that people have lost perspective of is there is perfection to recording. And the perfection to recording is this, is knowing the imperfections to leave in. Everybody's on a computer. Every beat is dead on. They auto-tune the pitch of the singer. Guess what? Now it doesn't feel like a drummer. And that weird little tone that you hear in auto-tune just pushes you away a little bit from the voice.
Right.
I can't remember what it is, but one of the great Journey songs drives me fucking nuts every time I'm in a diner or somewhere and I hear it, because right at the apex of the song, he's flat.
No.
But the rest of the song is brilliant.
Right.
But me having picky ears,
sure.
I always point out to the wife, he's flat. And she goes, I know, you say that every time. You know.
Yeah.
But it's still a great song and it feels great. I had an infallible system of response to performance in the studio. If my arms would explode into goosebumps, the next thing out of my mouth would be, don't touch that. It's awesome.
Right.
And that would be it. My body would tell me, not my brain, not analysis, not is that perfectly in line with the click track. It's just suddenly I'm breaking out in goosebumps. I'm going, dude, you just hit a phrase.
Right.
And we're not going to touch. Oh, no, I can do it better. No, you can't. We're not going to touch it. It's magic.
Right. Yeah. During that era, was there a band, or maybe even two, that caught your ear? A band that you didn't work with, so not Great White, not GNR.
Countless. Listen, I only ended up working with the people that nobody else wanted. I would love to have worked with Tears for Fears.
Oh.
I would love to have worked with World Party. I loved World Party. Goodbye Django, what a fabulous record that is.
Right.
I did try working with the Angels from Australia.
Right.
Which was not the experience I was hoping for. You know, there were endless other bands and musicians that you'd go, oh, wow, he's good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when you have one or two bands that you're responsible for yourself, it takes up a lot of time. It's 365, 24 hours a day. It is not an occupation. It is a way of life. And the phone is going to go at 3:42 in the morning, and you'd better be able to find the bail.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So
Ugh.
you have plenty to do looking after who you're looking after. And, you know, mentally, you could flirt with the idea of, gosh, it'd be wonderful to work with that person.
Yeah.
2 bands on your plate, that's a lot of work right there. And there were more than 2 bands.
Right. You know, one of the things that often crosses my mind is like, could you have handled a motley crew in addition to the other 2 they have that were the
Not at the same time.
Yeah, probably would
Not at
have.
the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, I signed Motley Crue to their first contract
Right.
at Greenworld. And I'm a bit ambivalent about it now because I don't think they showed themselves to be really people that I would have in my home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way they
Right.
treat other people, the way they treat women. And I tend to look at them as barbarous entertainers. Whereas my particular sweet tooth is more to the artistic side.
Right.
Something a little different, something that maybe puts another layer of comprehension on an emotion or a circumstance.
Yeah. GNR opened up for the Cult, and what a hell of a bill. You know, they were promoting the Electric album, which was that was their breakthrough album. I mean, I know Sonic Temple sold more and kind of blew them wide open, but it all started with that Electric album.
Yep.
And so GNR was supporting them. Yeah.
That was worth a ticket.
Mm-hmm. Any memories of that one? I mean, what stands out from that?
Well, at the end of every tour and the last show, beware. Because it's the last show, that means that the opening band or other people might just decide it's time to be pranksters. And the last show, that particular tour, was in New Orleans, and there was this set of steps and a walkway and steps down that went over the Cult's backline. So I'm watching the Cult play, and I see my fucking crew coming out on stage. Asbury's got his back to them. He can't see. None of the band can see what's going on. But they go up on the steps and along the walkway and then take off their towels, which is all they're wearing.
Jeez. Did they have a sense of humor
There
about
they all
it?
are. Oh, they had a great sense of humor about it. They went into our dressing room and completely trashed it.
Oh,
put food on the walls, food on the ceiling, food in the lock, and totally demolished our dressing room. And of course, the promoter came along and went, "Well, that's going to be expensive."
Right.
Later that night, Ian had a girlfriend with him called Renee, if I remember her name correctly. And Ian and Renee and Axl and I went to a bar in the French Quarter. And Renee and Ian, for a change, were having an argument. Those two were always spitting and batting at each other. And we're in this bar, and Renee's had enough, and she turns around, she walks out of the bar through the open doors, down the street. And as she's going down the street, this pickup pulls up alongside her, and this guy starts to talk to her, and she turns to talk to the guy, and Ian sees this, and in his hand he had a huge jug of wine.
Oof.
That jug of wine went airborne and smashed right over the windscreen of the truck.
Oh, jeez.
At which point, Axl, Ian, and myself disappeared like cartoon characters, each of us in a different direction at a sprint. We were out of there as fast as possible. Didn't see Axl until the next day, and I didn't see Ian for about another 3 years.
Was he with the same woman by that point, or was that the end of the relationship?
I don't think that relationship went much further.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I would have.
I couldn't believe it. I'm standing there and I'm watching this. I mean, it was this big jug of wine, this big, and I'm watching it float through the air. And I'm going, no, 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 it can't be. It was a perfect shot.
Was it no? Was it no, no, no? Because he was wasting the wine, or?
No, it was no, no, no. This is not going to end well. That guy might. You're going to smash this guy's truck up. What's he going to pull out from under his seat?
Oh, sure.
We're in New Orleans. A lot of Southern boys down there like to do their drinking. They like to keep their firearms under their seat.
Right.
I'm looking at this and going, not going to end up well. Bye, guys, sprinting out the door. See ya. I'm gone.
There you go. 50-yard dash, huh? Record time.
150.
150. There you go. Oh man. So Havana Black, that was a band that I really enjoyed that you were involved with as well. What do you think in retrospect, was that a label thing as to why they didn't get a bit of a pop?
It's a comedy of errors. You have a really great guitar player who reminded me a lot of John Cipollina, of Quicksilver.
All right.
Great guitar player. You've got a really solid rhythm section, and then there's Hannu with a voice that you go, how does that come out of Finland?
Right.
Oh my God, what a great rock and roll voice. And you're thinking, we can't go wrong here. The first major problem was the collapse of Great White's first headline tour because of Jack's drug taking. I had to stop the tour to get him clean because I'll lose a tour, but I'm not going to lose a singer.
Right.
And if he's in this condition, I've got to get him off the road and get him clean. So that stopped. The Havanas and MSG were opening for him, so that went by the by. Then we were off Capitol because the relationship with Hale Milgram was not great. It was not good at all. And then I found out that he was out the door and Gary Gersh was coming in. And we'd known Gary Gersh at EMI USA, and we did not want to know Gary Gersh again. So we were out of Capitol. I sat down with Hale Milgram and said, let us out of the contract. And by the way, give me a fucking check as well. And he did. He let us out of the contract, and he gave us a check for $200,000. And he also let me walk with the Havana Masters. So we were nothing to do with Gersh and Capitol anymore. And took those to Peter Paterno at Hollywood. And Paterno wanted to get the second Havana record working. And it's the mistake you make. And the mistake you make, and part of it is you don't want to be seen to be completely controlling and overbearing, although that's in some ways what you're supposed to be as a manager. But they decided they had put the band with a guy called Eddie Kramer. Now you read Eddie Kramer's discography and your jaw drops.
Right.
This is a guy who sat at the board and recorded Jimi fucking Hendrix in Electric Ladyland. All right, and worked on a number of other really solid records. So you think, fine, that may be a good call. got a psychedelic guitar player. I've got a singer with an absolutely brilliant rock and roll voice. Put him with Eddie Kramer, it's going to be fine. What's the problem? The problem is that Eddie Kramer can't write a song. And because he can't write a song, he can't recognize a good song, and he's recording what I call mediocrity from my band. And I'm not happy about it. Worse, without any discussion, he has the drummer fired out of the band. And the first I hear about it is, Jussi is fired. And I'm going, what the fuck? Oh, don't worry, we've got this guy coming from Finland, he's going to be good. And he wasn't good. And the chemistry of the band that existed, that I connected to, is now totally compromised. You know, and we lost Jussi. So I had, and the other thing about Eddie Kramer is he's probably the most arrogant person I've ever met. And think about that. I've been in the music business area for a bit.
Right.
For me to say that he's one of the most arrogant people I've ever met tells you something. So we have a poor record being badly recorded by a band that's no longer the band that I connected to. There's the Havana Black story.
Ah,
You know,
yeah.
it shoulda, coulda, would have been. I mean, every time I listen to Indian Warrior still,
Mm-hmm.
it holds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stands the test of time. Lonely Wolf.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Play that one track, you go, hello, we've
Yeah.
got one here.
I forget exactly what the year that record came out, but you know, at that point there were still bands selling records. I mean, you look at the band like the Black Crowes were selling records at that point. I mean, there's no reason why Havana Black couldn't be doing that classic,
Right.
you know,
I
70s
like
sound.
the Crows.
Yeah.
I like the Crows. The only thing I didn't like about the Crows was their label.
Oh,
I am not a Rick Rubin fan
okay.
in any way.
Yeah. What's the issue? If you can share. I mean, I can speculate. I know, you know, I've had conversations with
Tom
people.
Zutaut
Ah,
put together a dinner at a steak house in Manhattan called Gallagher's. And it's been there, I don't know, maybe 100 years or something. I mean, really, really famous place. Everybody is eating dead meat. And I turn up, and there's Tom and there's Rick Rubin, and my butt is barely in the chair. Then he starts making crude and offensive remarks to me, to the point where I just got up off the table and I looked at Tom and I said, enjoy your dinner, and walked away. And Tom and Rick, they were thinking GNR. Let's put Rick Rubin with GNR, and I'm going, you're out of your ever-loving fucking mind. No, that's not going to happen. He's got an incredible discography, but on the other hand, I think he's almost got enough personal honesty now to admit that he's a charlatan.
right.
He can't write a song. He can't talk in terms of arrangement and construction. He's just whether I like it or not.
Right.
You know, and how brilliant do you have to be to go into Metallica after they made a couple of iffy records and say, why don't you make a record like you did before you made the iffy record? Oh,
Right. Yeah.
genius. Let's put him on the cover of Time. Give me a break.
Right. No, I mean, I think I've heard stories as well. I mean, I think you would think of one of the bands on his label, well, even the Black Crowes, you know, to a degree, said the involved. I think he wanted to call them like Cobb County Crows for KKK, which I mean,
Yeah.
that's oof, bad call there. And they did they stuck with the name, so there you go, their name. But yeah, I mean, I had conversations with people, and like with this band Slayer. I mean, they're basically saying it was the engineer pretty much that produced the records.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Rick Rubin would be in a bar or a restaurant or having dinner and leave a message. Call me when you think you've got something.
right. Yeah.
I'm producing a record. I'm the first one there. I'm the last one to leave. Every day.
Let's
Not
say,
call me when you think you've got something.
right. Let's say you did, get convinced to bring him on board. How long do you think that would have lasted?
Rick Rubin?
Yeah, producing or whatever it is that he does.
It would have been a non-starter as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I
Total
don't think that.
non-starter.
Yeah.
I mean, Tommy had who was the guy who owned Pasha Studios who produced?
Oh, Spencer Proffer.
Spencer Proffer, thank you.
Yeah.
Tommy had Spencer Proffer lined up for Guns N' Roses.
For Appetite, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And as far as I was concerned, that was a non-starter, and it didn't. And I think, here's the advantage of looking back over 30 years. Opinion becomes solidified as fact, and facts are constructed by numbers.
Right.
I can look back and say, we made the right decisions on Appetite for Destruction. Look at how many damn records it sold. We did the right things.
Right. Speaking of Appetite, is there a particular song that you've kind of grown tired of hearing, listening?
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah. God, no. Oh, more Guns N' Roses. I mean, bear in mind that radio wouldn't touch them for the first 6 months of the record's release.
Right.
And now, wherever you are in America, you're going to hear them at least once a day.
Yeah.
Enough already. Yeah, no, it's a different thing for me because it was very much the fabric of my existence for several years, 5, 6 years. But on the other hand, I can say the same thing about Great White songs that I've written. It's like, please, no, I don't want to fucking hear that again. Done with that. Once in a blue moon, something will sneak up on me and I'll listen to it and I'll be in a good headspace and I'll connect to it well. And at the end of it, I'll go, that's okay. We did okay. I remember sitting in, we used to have a Hastings, who were a book and record store. I remember sitting in the Hastings parking lot with my daughter and Rock Me came on. And I was about to get out of the car, turn this crap off, let's go. Yeah. And my daughter put her hand on my arm and said, just wait, let's listen for a minute. So I sat there and I went, okay. And we sat down and a pair of us listened together, and then we looked at each other and went, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But ordinarily,
Nah.
I have a little shelf of songs that I composed a long time ago that I have not had the opportunity to record properly, and I would be interested in doing that. But looking at the business as it is today, looking at the bands that are out there today, there's not an awful lot that lights your fire.
Right.
That makes you go, oh, this is interesting, or this is a good twist. My family will accuse me of being the 365 days of the year grouch that when they put something on Bluetooth through the stereo in the kitchen, I sit there and I go, that sucks. Put something else on.
Right.
It sucks.
Right.
They put something else on. I go, and that sucks too. And they sit there and they go, you think everything sucks. And I go, yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. But I think one of the things too is that some of these bands that have been getting a pop, they're all retro bands. You know, you look at the band like the Struts, they're doing a lot of the glammy stuff like the Queen and stuff like that. And I think the Dirty Honey, they're doing something along the lines of like Aerosmith-ish. And then you have Greta Van Fleet, who started off as basically a Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, but they're a boy band, darling.
Yeah, yeah.
Greta Van Fleet
they grew up.
Boy band.
Yeah, they grew up, and then now they've kind of lost their way. You know?
Are they artists?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess anybody that creates is an artist, right?
No.
No.
No. There's something particular and personal in the assessment of an artist. If I say Tom Petty, you'll agree with me. And I'll say this too. Axl Rose has the ability to be an artist. Is he an artist now? I don't know. Was he an artist consistently back in the day? No, he wasn't. He would write Civil War, which I thought was fucking brilliant, and then come up with Right Next Door to Hell after that.
Right.
So there's an inconsistency there. There are an awful lot of bands who go through motions that have been incredibly well defined. And in some ways, take this for an analogy. Once upon a time, there was this overgrown meadow. Maybe one or two people had been into it. And because they went into it, other people came in and played in it. And then somebody actually brought a mowing machine and cut the grass. And then more people came and they put up a pair of goalposts. And more people came. And then they put lines all over the ground. And more people came. And then they put up bleachers on either side. And lots more people came. You go back to 1964, you've got that overgrown meadow. Today, we have an overdeveloped stadium with lines everywhere and everything is already being done, and it's really hard to find a way to express the personality of the band with any degree of uniqueness, because so much has already been done. You and I will sit there and go, yeah, that's pretty good. That sounds like Zeppelin 2 to me, you know?
Right.
Oh, Greta Van Zepp. Yeah, okay. I remember hearing Zeppelin 1 for the first time. It blew my wheels off. It was awesome. We're never going to have a Zeppelin 1 again. Not now.
No. Yeah. You're
Sad,
right.
but that's it.
Yeah. So,
and I think where most people miss it at the moment, if there is an area
right,
of the field that has actually started to get weeds and grow unpredictably and out of control again, I think it's content. It's use of word and lyric, because use of musical instrument now is so computerized, so controlled, so immediately corrected that all the soul gets sucked out. So if there's a way to find a sense of soul again, it's in how somebody says something. In content, it's lyrics, it's what's your point of view and why do you have it. I think that's a possibility. But, you know, I mean, when I was working on things like storm perception, my first problem was finding an engineer who hadn't grown up in the digital world, and I couldn't find one. So I had to take a digital engineer, and for example, I'd say, that kick drum, we're going to adjust it all the way through this track. And he immediately hits a button and up goes the screen and there are bars across the screen, and I would cuff him over the head. And he'd go, "What?" And I said, "Do you see that thing in front of you?" "What, you mean that fader on board?" "Exactly. You're going to adjust this drum, this bass drum, by adjusting that fader as to how you feel and hear it all the way through. You're not going to give it one quick swipe of a computer adjustment where everything is the same. I want you to feel it." And he's looking at me like, I got to go through the whole song with the fader? Yes, because that's how we used to do it. Putting something up on a computer screen and suddenly, boom, there's a line.
Right.
Everything
Nice.
conforms to that line. It's like, nah.
Yeah. Hey, Alan, always a pleasure. I'm
Well,
I'm going to
thank you
keep.
for your
I'm going to.
hospitality. Thank
Yeah.
you for your time. Thank you for your
Yeah.
support.
Yeah. Same here. I always love chatting with you. Although I really am running out of stuff to ask you, so I better
Well,
dig
good.
deep. I better dig
It's
deep.
about time you got bored with me.
I better dig deep. All right, Alan, enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll get you guys
I
leaks.
intend to. I got
Nice.
invited to go to a friend's house and sit in his jacuzzi.
Yeah, there
So
you go.
I am headed there right now.
Well, enjoy your night. We'll talk
I
soon,
will.
okay?
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye.